Welcome everyone, Kostin here with a discussion about Old War Warhammer 3, Immortal Empires, and the kind of changes that I would hope Creative Assembly would implement for Kislev once 6.1 comes out. Assuming that they're going to do any changes for Kislev in 6.1. We have no idea. We have no idea when 6.1 is going to come out. We have no idea if there's even going to be a 6.1. I guess we'll have to wait and see with regards to that. But CA have stated publicly that they are going to do changes for Kislev. Campaign changes for Kislev, specifically. This was one of my main issues with Shadows of Change, believe it or not. I mean, that Ostankya's campaign not being great, the Changeling campaign not being great, there's a whole list of issues. But certainly out of the races affected by Shadows of Change, I think Kislev really needed significant changes and they didn't get them. And Kislev is absurdly broken right now in the game. When I say broken, I don't mean weak. No, I am not talking about weakness whatsoever when we're talking about Kislev. Kislev just kind of breaks the game, and you're incentivized to play in such a way that you're breaking the game. See, being able to cheese and abuse game mechanics is something available in pretty much every campaign. But the fundamental question about that is, do you need to do it to achieve success? With regards to, say, a race like Khorne, the answer is no. With regards to a race like Ogres, the Empire, the Dwarves, etc., not really. You can benefit from doing it, to be sure, but you don't need to do it. Whereas Kislev, you kind of need to do it for a number of reasons. But what is so broken about Kislev cheese? Well, for instance, let's say we have Grimgor over here, right? So I marched near Astrogoth. Grimgor has also marched against him. Let's say we sell some territory to Grimgor right here. Carrick Doom as well, you know, get a biblical amount of money from Grimgor. Hell, I could even get him to get involved in a war with Archaon over here by selling that territory to him. Maybe that is very beneficial. But you already see a situation where maintaining your economy in a Kislev campaign is not about building up economic structures. It's about taking territory, like this for instance. Taking territory. If you're wondering about Ostankya's campaign mechanics in Katarin's campaign, there's a mod that does add that, and Recruit Defeat the Legendary Lords added Ostankya for me. But that is a mod. Regardless, you're far better off when you're playing a Kislev campaign to take territory and sell it to other factions, to a degree or another. Now, this is something every campaign can do, to be sure. But what's broken about Kislev is how beneficial this is, and it's not even about the money. Mind you, you can create a loop of region trading to give you infinite money in the game. You can do this as any race, to be sure, but Kislev can do this very early on, like by turn 4 in Katarin's campaign, or turn 5 in Katarin's campaign, you can basically get infinite money during the course of that campaign. Because you take certain territories over here, you sell them to Prague, and then you can just constantly region trade and get infinite levels of money. I haven't quite done that in this campaign, but once you sell territory to a faction of a different race, like Grimgor over here, you can then have a lord next to that region and just take them over, because garrisons will not spawn instantly. That is ridiculous as far as I see it in a campaign. And sure, it might be difficult for me to get a peace agreement with, someone like Grimgor for very clear and obvious reasons, but I could get peace agreements with other factions. You can do this very quickly as Katarin, with Ostland, with Ostermark, with Halabayim, with Azag, with Drika, with Clan Mulder, with so many factions, and get ridiculous sums of money. It's not even a question of like asking factions for money they don't have, because that's one of the things you can do, by the way, in a campaign. You can go to a faction, and let's say you sell them some territory, right? Let's say Ostland over here with Zavastra. They would give me 2,000. But even if they didn't have any money right here, right? Even if they only had like 600, I can always go and ask up to 2,000 gold that they don't have for this territory. That is how you get infinite money. What's a problem with Kislev is that it's not even just about the money. It's about supporters. So Katarin and Kastaltin do suffer from this. Borisers doesn't care as much, though he does have supporters to deal with. And Ostankya doesn't have supporters to tackle. But in Katarin and Kastaltin's campaign, you want to do this to an extent or another, because otherwise you're going to spend an enormous amount of time gaining supporters in a campaign. The best way to gain supporters is to invoke Urson. This gives you 5 supporters when occupying a settlement. And so when you're region trading this, like, let's say, you take this entire province, you build a bunch of barracks, you sell them to Osland and declare war on them. You get 20 supporters for this entire province by having a lord next to them. Then you do it with Ostermark, that's 40. Then you do it with Talabheim, that's 60. Then you do it with Draika, that's 80. Then you do it with Azag, that's 100. You get the point of why this is so absurdly stupid. But you want to do this because otherwise you are required to get 600 supporters for your short campaign victory condition. And the best way to gain supporters is for occupying territory. And so this incentivizes you in a Kislev campaign to do this and also be a very aggressive conqueror, which kind of flies in the face of how Kislev should play in a lot of different ways. You also want to do this because your economy, unlike other races who have a good economy or have such significant upkeep benefits like corn that they don't care, with Kislev's economy, the economic potential of their settlements just isn't great. It takes a good amount of turns to get all kinds of economic buildings, and you're looking at tier 3 spending like 2,000. There are some construction cost benefits I have here, but spending like 2,000 and 3 turns to get just 200 income as opposed to 150. That does take a good amount of time to recover. So you'll end up in a Kislev campaign taking a lot of territory, selling that territory because it's not really that useful for you, abusing all the money that the AI has, and gaining supporters as well through the process. That is absurdly broken. And that's just the first point. It is an issue in Katarin Kastaltin's campaign because if you're not gaining these supporters, you're not going to achieve your short campaign victory condition, which gives you heroes. Now, Kislev can get a good amount of hero capacity, except for one, Frost Maidens. See, Frost Maidens do have inherent limitations on how many of them you can actually have during the course of a campaign early on. There's some research that gives you a couple of hero capacity, but you're far, far, far better off if you are playing a Kislev campaign to try and get that short campaign victory condition. It's also a factor about supporters that if you're, say, playing Katarin, you want to get Kastaltin as quickly as possible. Not for Kastaltin himself, but for Erengrad. Because you look at Erengrad, I'll just give this example. Erengrad is such a great city compared to Kislev City. Like, let's consider what Katarin has in Kislev, right? She gets a structure that allows her to recruit Sargard at tier 3. That is really good. She gets a structure that gives her a bit of income and control. She gets a structure that gives her growth and furs. That structure for furs and growth and all that, it can be worth it sometimes. To be sure, it will help you grow Kislev City faster. But you compare this to Kastaltin or Prague, but like Prague you can just conquer militarily. You can't declare war on Kastaltin. Like Prague is very worth it, global recruitment benefits, patriarch benefits. But you look at Erengrad. What you have in Erengrad, you have Frostholm. This gives you 1 hero capacity for Frost Maidens, and also unlocks Light War-led recruitment, and gives you hero and lord recruit rank. Also gives you little Grom at tier 4. So yeah, Erengrad blows Kislev City out of the water. Prague has its own benefits, Griffin Legion, the ability of recruiting units from the Citadel of Prague, and giving global recruitment duration, benefits and global recruitment capacity. That is very, very useful, to be sure, but it's kind of a shame that Kislev City is genuinely the worst. Like, the principal settlement that Kislev has is genuinely the worst. So the landmarks over here in Kislev City should be changed. But another problem with these cities is that they're useful for these landmarks. They're useful for recruitment. They can grow decently fast, but they're not really worth it from an economic standpoint. And even their growth does suffer because they do have these two growth structures, but because they're single region provinces, and because a lot of growth does get tied to provincial capitals and having many regions in a province, these cities grow slower. It is a problem in other campaigns, but Kislev kind of suffers from this. Not as bad as some other people, but they do certainly have some issues with this. But then we get into how you completely break this even further. Right, so the cities won't generate a great amount of money. Like, you look at Skaven Blight or Hellpit, those will generate a good amount of money. Oh, you have a structure that goes up to 1,200 income, but it doesn't give you trade resources, it gives you trade tariffs. A regular settlement will actually generate more because eventually caravans can give you up to 50% tradable resource production in a local province. Though having economic structures at tier 5 is always an annoyance, I think like no economic structure should go above tier 3. Like, all the benefits should be available at tier 3. Tier 4 at most, and even that's a bit sketchy, but the vast majority of benefits should be gained by tier 3. Now, funnily enough, Old World as a mod, surprisingly, does a lot to help with this. Why? Because the Kislev cities in the Old World mod are actually in proper provinces. So they are worth it there from an economic standpoint. They still won't generate trade resources, so maybe the trade quorum should be available in the cities. But yeah, if they attach Kislev to the Southern Oblast, if they attached Erengrad to, say, Troll Country or all that, if they change the provinces in such a way over here to tie these cities to certain regions, that would be worth it far more. Now, you could say you lose commandments, but that is certainly a downside. You lose local recruitment capacity, some economic benefits, but it's just generally a worthy trade-off if you had it, even if you had to take control of the entire province. Something better should happen anyway. Now, Kislev is supposed to have atamans that make up for it, but they kind of do with like things like construction time and other benefits, but it won't be as substantial. Like, you would genuinely generate far more money in a Kislev province if you had like 3-4 regions for each Kislev city. Hell, even 2 regions would make a significant difference. You might have fewer atamans, but the entire ataman system is a gimmick anyway. You get some growth, economic construction time benefits. Like, the only one that's really worth it is construction time. So that is something I hope Creative Assembly does improve. Like, just that entire dynamic of supporters, the cities, the economy. Like, the economy needs to be better. And we shouldn't be playing around like, oh, be aggressive conquerors to invoke Urson, because the other invocations are absolutely not worth it. They will not generate anywhere near as much in terms of supporters as Urson will. It does force you to play an aggressive conqueror, or you're, and even then you might be spending 100 turns to get 600 supporters. Speaking about the supporter system, it's based on the Paris and Hector system that existed in the Total War Saga Troy. But the Total War Saga Troy did this far freaking better, because it didn't take you 100 plus turns to get to a high level of supporters. You weren't losing anywhere near as much in a Hector or Paris campaign by not confederating as quickly as possible. In fact, keeping Priam as a neutral faction, sure, you wouldn't get the massive military benefit that Priam could provide you, but you could also trade a lot of resources with him. Also, at every tier of supporters in Troy, you would get very, very decent benefits, like a special general, for instance. Whereas with Kislev, all you get is like control, leadership, and speed. Like, the speed and leadership, sure. Like, Kislev has very high leadership for their units. Control, kind of whatever. Diplomatic relations with Kislev, irrelevant, because Sultan can't declare war on you. You have good relations, regardless of which campaign you're talking about. You have good relations with Boris Ursus. So all these benefits end up being irrelevant. Really. In fact, if I'm playing a Kislev campaign, the high level of control that they have is not necessarily a significant benefit, because I would like more rebellions, especially chaos rebellions, because that would give me devotion. It's also annoying that these invocations scale up. Like, you're incentivized to conquer a lot of territory, right? Because of Urson. But at the same time, the more territory you hold, the more it costs to invoke one of these gods. So it further pushes you down that path of taking a lot of territory, but then selling that territory to some schmuck because they will give you more money for it, as opposed to you developing it. There's no reason in a Kislev campaign to actually ever develop any of these regions yourself. None. Because, again, you will get more money if you're constantly trading stuff to, you know, someone like Malachi. He will genuinely give you more freaking money than you would otherwise gain. Is that broken? Yes. Absurdly so. It is not a great dynamic. It is not a great system. It pushes you towards complete and utter bullshit level of play. Like, other factions might region trade. Again, you can take advantage of this in every campaign, to be sure. But no campaign goes as crazy from a benefit standpoint as Kislev does with regards to it. Because right now, I might be spending 10,000 gold. I might be in around my 10,000 gold. But I just don't care, really. Because I know I can, if I take a region every turn, I can sell it to someone. Then there's post-battle loot, all that kind of stuff, right? So what is the reason for me to play in any way defensively, which is kind of supposed to be the main reason Kislev does exist, right? We can also talk about the Ostankya's campaign mechanic. So Ostankya is really annoying to play because she has a stop bar. This top bar does give you very significant benefits. Yes, I have it in Katarin's campaign. There's a mod that can add that. But the way you unlock this top bar is by spending Spirit Essence, which you gain from battles, and then you spend them in the Witch's Hut. Well, the Witch's Hut is kind of supposed to act like Grom's Cauldron. I should point out, Grom's Cauldron is an inherently superior system. The reason it's superior is, like, with Grom, you just get faction-wide effects. With Ostankya's Hut, you get different kinds of single-use items that you can either put on an enemy unit or put on one of your units. And that means every single battle that, you know, you build up a lot of these, and you might get them in some battles and then have to, you know, go through the process of buffing and debuffing every unit. It's annoying. But what's even worse about this entire thing is, like, this gives you Spirit Essences, or it counts towards spending Spirit Essences, right? So what you really want to do in an Ostankya campaign is you want to, every single turn you start, you just go over here, you create whatever incantations you have. You don't even care about the effects, because you want to do this every turn to unlock the top bar abilities, because, yeah, teleportation to a magical forest, income gained from target settlement income, or an army consisting of things in the woods and all that is a substantially better benefit than any kind of buff there. Like, it's not that the buffs are useless, it's just like a tedious micromanagement, and you're incentivized to not give a damn about it. With Katarin, beyond how bad Kislev is as a city compared to Erengrad or Prague, there's another issue with Katarin. Katarin is supposed to be one of the more powerful magical users in the lore. She is genuinely pathetic as a lord. Like, as a mage, as a pure mage lord, she's not great. You know who's a good mage lord? Teclis can be considered one. Croak can be considered one. Like, obviously, Lord Croak is one. Katarin, she has Lore of Frost. She doesn't have Tempest magic. So that is a pretty substantial factor over there, because when you consider Tempest magic, right here, you get Hailstorm, Freezing Winds, Biting Wind, Hawks of Miska. So a generic Frost Maiden of Tempest magic is actually a better caster than Katarin is. And I'm not exaggerating with regards to that. There's just better spells. And even with the Lore of Frost that Katarin does have, Lore of Ice, even with the Lore of Ice that Katarin has, the problem with it is she's not really gaining any substantial benefits with regards to that. I mean, she might have some items, right, that can offer decent effects, but again, there's much better casters. Like, Drazov is a great caster lord. The reason Drazov is a great caster lord is not just because He has great magic. He has that as well. But he's a good melee fighter. He has flexibility because he has a flying mount. He's fairly durable in battles, but then he has such a special skill line with the lore of Hashut that his Flames of Asgore is genuinely scary to deal with. Katarin, she gets some Winds of Magic cost -1 for Crystal Sanctuary and Death Frost and Heart of Winter. She does get a -10% Winds of Magic cost for all spell and 25% cooldown, but this doesn't compare to what Teclis, Drazov, even Mazmundi do have. Her spells are not worth casting. Her skill line is pretty weak. Her special skill line is honestly pretty pathetic. Really. Like, she gets a bunch of melee benefits, but she doesn't have a melee skill line, so it's whatever. Con Queen doesn't compare to Boris Ursus' skill line over there. Like, Boris Ursus has an amazing skill line. Kostaltin is kind of whatever. Ostankya is pretty decent. The only real benefit is the 8% ward save. Now, Katarin does have -50% upkeep for Ice Guard units and -50% miscast base chance. Fair enough. The corruption benefit is relevant. The Ice Guard benefit, kind of useful, but the problem is you don't really want to mass Ice Guard because you'll be better off getting an army of Tsar Guard, getting an army of Ashina, Streltsy, and all that. Ice Guard are a great support ranged unit because of the way their damage works. Their magical attacks, their slow attacks. But you don't want just an entire army of Ice Guard. It is not going to be anywhere near as effective as an army like this, for instance. And this is not even an ultimate army. Like, I should probably replace these Kossars with more Akshina, Streltsy, and because I have plenty of melee like Otruk Felix, the Golden Knight. Get a couple of Tsar Guard, maybe get some cavalry. But yeah, getting a bunch of Ice Guards is just not worth it. So those are the kind of things I think Kislev does deserve. Their research tree requiring devotion for certain technologies, kind of annoying as well. It's great that you can at least get hero capacity through the research tree, though it is annoying that you have that unless you're playing Katarin, you have to first get Ice Sculpting. The way the research tree is structured, you're always going to go for Ice Sculpting, Cold Storage, and then Troll Country Pathfinder. The reason you go down this path is Cold Storage gives you some growth. Troll Country Pathfinder gives you campaign movement range, which you want, very substantial benefit, and then improved lookouts or whatever the heck else you want. Though it is also frustrating certain technologies can be locked, like, you know, controlling or having an alliance with a faction controlling one of those Kislev cities. This is, by the way, one of the reasons you actually want to unlock this top bar as quickly as possible as Ostankya, because you want to get to Kislev to make an alliance with Katarin and actually unlock Kislev units. Like, the limitations of recruitment in Ostankya's campaign do suck, especially considering how far away she is. Also, why is she in Nagaron? Like, I understand to some extent that people complained with Order of the Chaos Dwarves that the lords all started close to each other. I don't think that's really too much of an issue in itself, with the exception of Zaytan, and the problem with Zaytan is more so that the terrain where he starts just sucks, as opposed to him starting too close to Zarnagrund as well. Because you play Astrogoth's campaign versus Drazov is a very, very different experience. It's more so the issues of how they decided to do Zaytan's starting position as opposed to him being too close. But then Creative Assembly probably reacted to that kind of complaint and was like, okay, let's put her on the other side of the planet, where she either wipes out Marathi or she gets wiped out by Marathi. It certainly did change the dynamic over there in Nagaron, I'm not gonna lie, but it is silly. It is really freaking silly to have that situation. So yeah, I think like Ostankya should be changed. Like, some people have said there should be a magical forest over here in Kislev that Ostankya should start in. I think that makes perfect sense. I know that it does create this kind of dynamic where every Legendary Lord of Kislev starts in the same location. Fair enough. But you can have Legendary Lords in close proximity to each other and still have very, very different campaigns to one another. Like, consider Ungrum versus Forgrim. They start pretty close to one another. Ungrum's campaign is a significantly different experience than Forgrim's campaign because of campaign sentence. Like, Xiaoming and Miaoying start pretty close to each other. very different experiences. Karl Franz and Elspeth start close to each other. Again, very different campaign experiences. Or they should, or whatever they decide to do with Ostankya, they should allow her to get to Kislev far quicker, and in a less in less of an annoying fashion. Finally, we gotta talk about the Ice Core training system, because oh boy, does this system suck. So, these Frost Maidens and Ice Witches, you can't just recruit them normally. No, you gotta train them first, and it takes many turns to do so. Even with Katarin, who has a benefit to Ice Core training duration of -2 turn, it's still 6 turns to train a Frost Maiden. The issue is not just the duration. You know, you could possibly deal with that. The issue is that the training system gives you a bunch of hero effects or lord effects. Now, some of these can be completely useless. So, for instance, you know, you look at an Ice Witch like... actually, I think maybe this one could be... No, let me go over the one I'm actually training. So you can get things like Winds of Magic Power, Reserve Capacity, Unbreakable, which is kind of pointless, and Infantry Focus. Out of these 3, only Infantry Focus is actually really useful. But then you can get a Lord that has 30 Growth, 10% Missile Strength, or Missile Strength in general. Or you get the Patriarch Capacity Lord. Control, Perfect Vigor. Not the greatest one, to be sure. But there are some really, really good effects over here, but it's always randomized. You cannot control what you're getting. You, however, can play a Realms of Chaos campaign. I'd recommend Realms of Chaos for this because it's just going to be faster in turns. You can, however, play a Realms of Chaos campaign and just continuously train Ice Witches and Frost Maidens until you get the effects that you want. The reason that's important is you can get an Ice Witch that has like 10% cooldown to spells, for instance. Or one that reduces your construction cost in a campaign, though I don't think I necessarily have to. Oh, actually, it's this one. So you can get one that has Builder, minus 20% construction cost. This stacks, by the way. This is one trait that genuinely breaks High Elves in a campaign. Because what's the point of an economy if you can get free fucking construction with Lords? And it's more powerful with High Elves because they also have instant construction, because they also reduce construction time. Like Karl Franz can reduce construction time, but he still has to pay with the buildings. Reducing construction time is reasonable. I think construction times should be reduced by default. Like, I think some things just take way too long. It is broken that you can basically build everything in one turn, because like you're always incentivized to do that. Why wouldn't you, right? So it creates a bad campaign dynamic for Karl Franz, for instance, that he's always pushing to get nobles, or he's using the low save character system. But free construction is even worse. Free construction is worse because it destroys the entire purpose of an economy. Like, if I had five of these Ice Witch Lords loaded up with Builder, I wouldn't have to pay anything for any kind of construction. You know what's even more broken about the region trading bullshit that I do? You can even get population surplus points when you're trading regions to one faction to another. Like, you trade one settlement, then you get back by trading another settlement that actually gives you population surplus. Like, for instance, the entire Southern Oblast over here, I had so many population surplus for all the region trading I was doing that I was able to get 3 out of 4 settlements to tier 2 in like 6 turns of this campaign. This is the reason why I'm pushing tier 4 right here by turn 23 in this situation. And keep in mind that I was doing a bunch of region trading over here. Sure, I did get a decent amount of growth as well, but it's not just the growth that allowed me to do that. It's not just the growth buildings that Kislev has that allowed me to do that in this campaign. So yeah, it ends up being less than stellar as a campaign dynamic. The Frost Maiden recruitment system, the Ice Witch recruitment system is just annoying. Like, if you could choose what trait you wanted, maybe for a cost, I don't know, some kind of cost or in life, anything like that, if you could do it faster, that would be better. Though we do have to talk about, you know, free construction of buildings, because that is going to always be broken. I think that should just be removed completely from the game. It should be removed from High Elves with Administrator. It should be removed from Kislev with Builder. Hell, it should even be removed from the Dwarves, because there's never a reason to not use it. Never. Or maybe not removed, but it shouldn't freaking stack. Because that's the problem. It stacks. You get more of these, it stacks. That's one of the changes that I think should be made. Like, certain effects should not stack like that. There should be a limit, at least. Maybe a cap of 40%, so only 2 of them. As opposed to just, like, getting 5 of them and having free construction in every single province. Or the province that they're in. And mind you, I didn't even abuse that in this campaign. That's saying quite a bit, like how just broken region trading, focusing on devotion, all that is. And even this is not necessarily the craziest, because I probably could have pushed 400 plus supporters by this point if I was going completely crazy in this campaign. Like, for instance, I could have taken this entire province, right? Then sold this province to Arbol before I declared war on him. And then took it back, gotten a lot of supporters. It just, when you're incentivized to cheese like that as a player, it doesn't create a great campaign dynamic. Again, it's an issue for High Elves as well. High Elves are actually more broken than Kislev in a lot of ways. Though they're also less annoying than Kislev in some ways, because in a High Elf campaign, when you're playing it, yeah, you might get instant construction and free construction, but you're not playing tic-tac-toe or ping-ponging with region trading from the very beginning of your every campaign. You are doing that in a Kislev campaign, and it isn't a great dynamic. That's all I had to say. Kostin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.